New developments in the legal showdown over the Trump administration's deportation flights. The federal judge demanded more information from the DOJ on the deportation flights that he tried to block. That deadline is right now, 12 p.m. Eastern time on the dot. The administration did not ask for an extension. In fact, they have just filed their response. We will bring you excerpts and details from that in the coming moments. Now, these flights that are at issue carried illegal immigrants, suspected members of the Venezuelan prison gang Tren de Aragua. The administration says many individuals suspected of kidnapping, all sorts of terrible criminal activity were on these flights, at least in part. Now, a designated foreign terrorist group, that's what TDA is, and that's what's at issue here. President Trump calling for the judge to be impeached. We just got that document. We'll read it to you as we get it. Hello, everyone. This is Outnumbered. I'm Kayleigh McEnany here with my co-host, Harris Faulkner. Also joining us, Cheryl Casoni, Fox Business anchor and host of American Dream Home. Rachel Campos-Duffy, Fox & Friends weekend host and anchor of Fox Noticias. And Steve Doocy, Fox & Friends co-host. Well, the Trump administration doubling down on its push to deport suspected members of Tren de Aragua, despite opposition from the courts and from Democrats. White House Press Secretary Caroline Leavitt reminded everyone of exactly who they're trying to remove from this country.
I would remind everybody in this room that Tren de Aragua is a foreign terrorist organization operating within the United States of America because the previous administration allowed them to invade our country. These are monsters who tortured, raped, and murdered a 12-year-old Jocelyn Nungre. They murdered 22-year-old nursing student Laken Riley. They led a multi-state sex trafficking operation involving smuggling women into the United States, holding them in stash houses in Louisiana, Florida, New Jersey, Texas, and Virginia, and forcing them into prostitution. They kidnapped and murdered a 33-year-old woman in Texas. They sexually and physically assaulted a woman and her daughter in Wisconsin. They conducted a mass shooting in Illinois. They peddled untraceable ghost guns across New York City, took over an Aurora, Colorado apartment complex where they kidnapped and tortured victims. And by the way, many of you in the mainstream media said that didn't happen. It turned out that it did.
And for those who needed a civics lesson, some of whom are in the mainstream media, well, they got one from none other than White House Deputy Chief of Staff Stephen Miller, who had quite the exchange on CNN. Watch this.
So just to ask you a simple question, you talk about how the system works. Does a district court judge have the right to direct or enjoin troop movements overseas? Yes or no?
Well, Stephen, my question.
Well, no,
if you could answer my question first.
In other words,
is Venezuela invading our country in a way that would apply this way?
So I'll answer yours, and you'll answer mine. Under the terms of the statute, Tren de Aragua is an alien enemy force that has come here as detailed at length in the proclamation at the direction of the Venezuelan government. The statute says that a president has the ability to repel an invasion or predatory incursion that is directed by a foreign
state
government.
or a government, right? Are they a state or a government?
This would be, yes, it is documented. The TDA was sent by the Venezuelan government in the proclamation. And here's an even more important point. Under the Constitution, who makes that determination? A district court judge elected by no one, or the commander-in-chief of the Army and Navy? The president and the president alone makes a decision of what triggers that determination.
So do you then think
we
are actually at war with Venezuela, the nation state of Venezuela?
You're not hearing me, and you're not understanding me.
So let me set the stage here, and I do have the newly filed DOJ memo right here in front of me. This timeline's important. So this is where we are. This all happened Saturday. And as you see, at about 5:22 p.m., the judge ordered this hearing to take place about these two plane loads of suspected criminals. Some of those on the plane suspected criminals, not all of them. 5:45 p.m., the plane takes off, the two planes. 6 p.m., the hearing resumes. Now, before 6:52 p.m., you have Boasberg issuing a ruling ordering the government to turn around any planes. Now, these two planes were already in the air. And the written order, as you can see, does not go out until 7:30, which is why you see Caroline Leavitt making the distinction between the verbal and the written order. Steve, I'm looking at the DOJ response right here, March 15th, 2025. After the proclamation was publicly posted and took effect, 3 planes, they now say, carrying aliens departed the U.S. for El Salvador. 2 of the planes departed before 7:25 p.m. That's before the written order. The third plane departed after that time. The administration says to avoid any doubt, no one on any flight departing the U.S. after 7:25 p.m. was removed solely on the basis of the proclamation at issue. It's a tricky argument they're making because they're saying the judge has no authority to rule on this because of this act that we're leaning on. However, we still complied. And here are the facts.
Right. And the reason this whole lawsuit started was because the ACLU and another group was suing to make sure that 5 Venezuelans were not on any of those flights. And according to the government, they were not. But that's why today at noon, 5 minutes and 52 seconds ago, they had to comply and they had to say, OK, tell us about this and give us the summary of all this activity over the weekend. I am old enough to remember the old days when if there was a terrorist in the United States, we'd try to get him off our property as quickly as possible. Our federal government has designated that organization as a terrorist outfit. And so just imagine if they were members of Al-Qaeda or ISIS, we would want them disposed of as quickly as possible. What the president has done at the White House lawyers' brilliance, I suppose, they would say, is by signing that executive order on Friday night, essentially, as you were talking about, the Alien Enemies Act, you can deport non-citizens during war, invasion, or predatory incursions. And he's already said this was an invasion. Unfortunately for the Democrats, they now have to defend.
That's right.
They've got to defend, OK, this gang, this transnational gang of thugs accused of all these bad things. And the Democrats are defending them.
And take responsibility for what they fight for.
And I'm looking at the memo. It's 3 pages. It's very short. And one of the arguments they make is that all of this is currently pending before the D.C. Circuit. So this will not be resolved at this first level. It will be resolved at the appeals court, ultimately the Supreme Court.
I want to just speak to the issue of how well the details are being covered by the Trump administration. They know the lawfare facing them. We have never seen in the history of this country as many universal injunctions against an administration as we're seeing now. 126 in the second term, 127 in U.S. history. That's problematic.
That's a lot.
That's problematic. And we had the big wall information on it last hour. Look, why I say this is they're going to cover their tracks like nobody because they're doing a noble work that the American people told them that they wanted done on November 5th. They're getting the worst of the worst out first. And so this is the kind of detail covering that I'm talking about that's going on. So you mentioned, Kaylee, that before 7:25 p.m., 2 of those planes, 2 of the 3, took off before the judge could even say anything. Sounds like he needs a new watch if he was trying to stop that. Didn't work out. But even consider who was on the 3rd plane. These were all Title VIII final removal order individuals. They had to go. And if you're telling me that this judge wants to keep in this country those who already had removals against them, potentially from the last administration, and they'd been here for years, I'd have to see each record to know that, but that's been the statistic on some of these guys, that would mean Biden's camp sat on it. And now we are getting rid of them. Who wants to stand in their way? And to your point, if the ACLU or Democrats want to get behind this judge and say, oh, Borsberg is the best ever, let him defend protecting those bad people over Americans. I'm right here for it.
Rachel, that's the key point here. This is a fight I think the administration wants. This is their top issue. I look at all these polls, NBC, all of them. The highest approval rating is on immigration. We saw yesterday 55%. They want this fight. They want to be standing on the side of deporting gang members.
Who is this judge? So this judge threw the book at every January 6th protester, including people who were just parading peacefully through the Capitol. Some of them old women got 14 months in prison. And he's fighting to keep Tren de Aragua in the United States of America. Make no mistake, this has been, and we've covered this extensively on Fox and Friends Weekend, but also on Fox Noticias. We've had Joseph Humeyer on here, who's an expert on what he calls weaponized migration. The government of Venezuela has used Tren de Aragua to destabilize countries throughout Latin America. Latin Americans have seen this before in all of their countries. When Joe Biden opened the border, Nicolas Maduro, who was funded by Iran and China and Russia, all the bad actors, said, get on up there. That's what happened. Donald Trump is 100% right. This is an invasion. It's weaponized migration. It was meant to destabilize our country. Donald Trump is doing the right thing, and this is a great fight for him. The Democrats are going to have to defend Tren de Aragua. Oh, my God.
Well, bring it on.
But the law is on the administration's side. And our colleague, Greg Jarrett, actually did a deep dive into the law that is being used here to deport these horrific individuals, these violent criminals. And it's not only is it just well established, he writes, it's never been repealed. It's been reviewed by the courts numerous times. 4 different presidents have invoked it, 3 of them Democrats, just during the 20th century. And by the way, they're trying to claim that this is only a wartime privilege. It is not, if you look at the law. And I'm so glad you brought up the approval rating of 55% of President Trump when it comes to immigration, because the American people want this. Who is crying that sex offenders and child rapists are being sent back to their home country? I hope no one.
I think they went in the court of opinion on this and likely the court of law. We will see as they appeal this and eventually could get to the Supreme Court of the United States.
Hey everyone, I'm Emily Campagno. Catch me and my co-hosts Harris Faulkner and Kaylee McEnany on Outnumbered every weekday at 12 p.m. Eastern, or set your DVR. Also, don't forget to subscribe to the Fox News YouTube page for daily highlights.